So in today's episode, we are going to start working on getting our camera to start rotating around our level or our level uh, slowly. So it's going to have like a center point and then it's going to rotate around the center point. It's just going to give like the game a little bit more of a difficulty level. So let us go and start getting this done. It is fairly simple, but you never know. We could run into some problems. So the first thing that we want to do, first of all, if you are new here, we are currently creating a maze cube quest game. So the object of the game is to get from point A to point B in the fewest amount of moves possible. And to start off with the game at the very first level, the first level is obviously going to be fairly simple. This is the first level that we've got at the moment, so it might change, it might not change, who knows. All you have to do is get from point A, which is right here where you have the cube, and if I play this, you can navigate your way using the arrow keys all the way down the maze, all the way to the right, and then back up to the other side, and then you obviously will have a count of 24. So in a simple level like this, there is only one, there will always be only one fewest amount of moves that you can do the level in, but in this level, because it's one straight line, well, not one straight line, but it's one path from point A to point B. Like there isn't different options. You can't make your count longer or increase your count unless you move backwards and then go back forward. So the object of the game is to move from point A to point B without having to go back and increase your move count. So today we are going to try and get our camera done. So you can see now our camera is kind of at a overhead angle. So you can see here's our camera. If I click on it, you can see by the look of these lines over here, you can see that it is looking directly down onto our level. We don't want to do this because it kind of looks weird. I mean, it doesn't look weird, but we can make it look better. So what we want to do is we want to go and change this. So let's create another empty object here. And this is going to be our camera center point. So to do the movement part of our camera, we need to create another script. So let's create another script and we will call this rotator. So we're going to call it that because depending on what different type of objects that we add into the game, maybe have different things that rotate in the game later on, we will reuse the script. So what we can do is we can double click on that and then we can get rid of our start method because I believe we don't really need that. I don't think we need any of this. Get rid of that. And then in here, we are going to need two things. One is our speed that we want to rotate our camera at. And the other is the direction that we want to rotate our camera at. So let's go and make this. So we're going to need we'll make it a serialized field because we're going to want to add this into our inspector so that we can change it when the game is running. And then we can obviously see what works and what doesn't work. So serialized field, private. It's going to be private because we don't really need to access it from any other script, but we do want it in the inspector, which is why serialized field is there. And then we can make this a float because this is going to be our move speed. So no, not move speed, rotate speed. So that's going to be the speed that the camera rotates around that center point. And then we need the exact same thing. So I'm just going to copy that. And instead of this being a float, we are going to call this vector3, and this is going to be rotate direction. So we'll save that. We don't need to save it because we're going to write another line of code here. So in our update method, this is where we are going to tell our camera to rotate. So to do that, all we have to do, I think, is go transform.rotate. And then in the brackets, we can go and say rotate speed. We're going to times our rotate speed by our rotate direction. And then we'll times that by time.delta time. So that should allow our camera to rotate around that center point. So that's all we are going to do in this class. We can save that and close that off. And because the way we have set that up, which that means we can reuse that wherever we want some kind of game object to rotate around some point. So on our camera center point, we are going to now go and add this rotator script onto it. So because you won't really see what this works, I'm going to reset our transform, and then I am also going to go and add in a cube onto it. So there's our cube. If I zoom onto that, we can now go and press play, and you'll see that this cube will now rotate, but it's not. And that's because we haven't filled out any of these. So we want a rotate speed of about 5. And then we also need to tell it which direction to rotate. So we want it to rotate, well, let's try all of them. Let's go and say x is equal to 1. So you can't see it in this side, but you can see here in our scene, our cube is currently rotating on the x-axis. So if we go and set that equal to 0, go set our y direction to equal to 1. That's going to rotate in the y direction. Now you can see it in our game window. And then if we set that equal to 0 and go and set our z-axis equal to 1, you can now see that that is rotating on the z-axis. So let's go out of our gameplay mode, and I'm going to put this at 10 for our speed, and then I believe what we want it to rotate around is our y-axis. So we can go and set y is equal to 1. So now if you play the game, you can see that our cube now rotates around our y-axis. It's a bit slow, so let's try and figure out a speed that works. Actually, that's a bit fast. We'll leave it at 10 for now. So now we don't really need the cube over there, so I'm going to delete the cube. And what we want to do is we want to get our camera to actually rotate around the center point. So what we can do is we can simply drag this onto our camera center point. And now we should have our camera rotating. So there we go. You can now see that our camera rotates around our scene. And because it's rotating around our scene, you kind of have to figure out which way is the correct way. So the controls don't change, but because of the camera and we're looking at it upside down, moving up in the up direction will actually move the cube down. And when you get to this point, you can now see that moving the cube in the up direction, still pressing the up arrow, will also move the cube in the up direction. But that's not it. We don't really want our camera to be at a overhead position. So let's go and move this slightly over there. And then we can go and rotate this to look not that way. We want it to move like that. So we'll put it there, I think. And then let's just move it down a little bit. Something like that. So let's go play that. I'm just going to increase our speed just so that, actually no, let's leave it like that. So we'll see now that the camera is going to move around the center point. So the level will always be in the center of the screen. Depending on, well, it should be, because we will position everything to be focused in the center, and because our center point pivot for our rotating camera is also in the center, the camera will always rotate around that center point. So as long as we put everything in the middle of the scene and the distance between the camera and the actual center point is big enough to see everything, it should be fine. So here you can see that our game is working, and it's kind of hard to figure once you play the game. It's kind of hard to figure out which way to go, because depending on the camera angle, the controls will be different. But because this level is kind of simple, it's only 3 directions you have to travel, really: forward, left, and then back up, or I can't really remember, forward, right, and then back up. It's not that difficult to complete it. If we had a harder version and there were more turns and you had to go in more different directions, it would be a lot harder to complete. So when I first made this video, let's go and end this quick. So when I first made this video, I was saying that because of how hard it turned out to be, because the first time I made this, I actually had a harder level. in the game. We had a lot more turns. It is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be because of the camera rotation. So I was saying that if we do eventually, or if we do decide to keep this rotating camera, we could only, or what am I trying to say? We could implement it in a way that it only comes later on in the higher levels, so that when you first start the game, some of the levels, they are easy. You get to feel what the object of the game is and how to play it. And then as you go on throughout the levels, we start to introduce more difficult things into it, like the camera rotating around the center point being one of them. Okay, but that is it for the camera rotating. So now let us go and try and get some kind of message displaying when we reach the endpoint. So to do this, we need to add some kind of trigger to it, and to do, well, I haven't really figured out what the best way to do that is, but for now we are just going to add a little bit of it, well, not a little bit, but a little sphere into our endpoint here. So if we go into here, so this is where we're going to add in our sphere. So let's go and add on our, actually I'm going to open up this prefab here, and I'm going to create a new 3D object, and it's going to be a sphere. So here's our sphere. So this sphere is going to be, let's go create another material. We will create a new material and we'll call this endpoint material. We'll make this green because green kind of is like a finished color, I guess. And then we'll drop this onto here. But why is this not in the middle? That's weird. It's weird that, actually, let's do this. Let's go onto here and reset this, reset that. Okay, there we go, that's why. So we'll put this in here. And the reason why it was doing that is because it was way out of position. So we'll go and set this, we'll go set the scale to be 0.2 by 0.2 by 0.2. So that makes it nice and small. So there we have it. And then what we want to do is we want to put this at about 5 and then about 2. So let's just see what this looks like. So there we have our cube. Okay, so it's kind of in the middle. It doesn't really matter because, I mean, it might have to be at 2.5 to get in the middle, kind of. I don't really know if that's the middle, but it doesn't really matter. The point is we need to be able to go into it so that we can collide with it. So let's go and start working on that. So to do that, in our scripts folder, we will create another script. This is going to be called our endpoint trigger. We'll open that up, and then I believe we don't need any of these. The only thing we need is our on trigger enter method, and then here we can go and say debug.log, and I'm going to say $, open our quotation marks, and then here we can go and say level, or let's say you completed the level in, open up our curly brackets and say global dot move count, and then we'll say you complete the level in so many moves with a full stop. Alrighty, so that is pretty much it. I'll save that, and now let's go into our game and see if that works. So let's play the game now, and we can see that if we control our cube all the way to our end, I'm doing it fast so that I can, okay, that didn't work, all the way to the end, you can see that, okay, it's not quite working because I don't think we've added it onto it yet. So let's go into our prefab here, and our sphere, we need to add in that script. So it was called, what was it called? Endpoint, there it is, endpoint trigger. And then we also need to tick is triggered on our sphere collider. So let's go back to our game here, and I just want to move the camera out a little bit because it is kind of close. I want to be able to see the entire scene. -10. Y is going to be at 10. And then I believe, let's see, this needs to be, that's at 0. Cam X is going to be equal to 2. No. -4. No. +3. I don't know. We'll set that equal to 0 because it should be in the middle. It's probably just the angle that it's facing. We'll set that equal to 50, round it off. Okay, so let's go play the game now, and we should be able to collide with our sphere collider and see a message being displayed to show us that we have completed the game in 25 moves, and that should display up there as well. So yes, it does. So now that's, you can see that is where we are going to get how many moves we've actually used in the game by accessing that move count variable that we displayed up there. So that's working quite nicely. We do probably need to fix this error that we are having with moving our cube into or colliding with our boundary walls, because we don't want to be able to go through these walls. So that is something that we'll probably fix in one of the next episodes. I need to figure out how to do that first before I actually film it. Otherwise we'll be here trying to figure it out forever. But that is pretty much it for today's episode. So thank you for watching if you made this far. If you haven't done so already and you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to my channel. It does help a lot. But yeah, I'll see you in the next episode, which is probably going to be tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of your day and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.